Today I'm going to talk to you about publishing digital books, a task my students did for the first time this year. So before I start, I want to ask, why digital books? Why is this so important for them? And to do this, I want to look at the history of digital books and some of the reasons why I integrated them into my curriculum this year. So if you look back, 2011, there's a lot of exciting news about devices coming into the classrooms, or classrooms were getting iPads, tablets, computers, and it was great. Books were being replaced, school bags weren't heavy, but then when you fast forward to this year, there were different headlines. So experts and so-called education experts were suddenly concerned that we were relying on technology too much. And most of that concern was because of some schools that literally just replaced the books with iPads. So they were using the iPads for nothing more than just expensive digital book readers. And that is one of the reasons why I wanted my students to create their own books, because I've been creating my own books and I wanted them to learn that you can do a lot more. So by creating all the multimedia content like videos, music, drawings for their books, and publishing their books themselves, they were able to see it more than just an expensive e-reader. So this is a quote from one expert who said it was damaging for a child's ability to learn if they just used technology as a digital reader. And I agree. If you are going to just put an iPad into the hands of a student and do nothing more than just get them to turn the pages of a book, that is damaging. It's not going to engage all students. However, if you look at the iPad or tablets, they do have accessibility features that you do not find in a book. So if you have a student who's, say, dyslexic and they cannot read, a book may pose a lot of challenges to them. However, if you look at an iPad, you have an inbuilt dictionary, note taker, text to speech, it's interactive. You can adapt the text sizes without having to print various different copies. And it can be easily updated. So if there's a mistake, you can fix it. You don't have to go out and buy or publish a new one. This is one example of accessibility. So we do have students with lots of different learning needs, one being dyslexia. And if a student does come in and they have issues reading, the screen will read back their notes or their books to them. This is a short part of an article that one of the students wrote, and they can use their iPad to
when people speak of diversity, they tend to speak in terms.
I have 4 brothers, each of us as different as chalk and cheese.
So I'm going to stop that, but you get the idea. You can speed up that voice or slow it down or change it depending on the student's individual needs. This is another example that I wish I had when I was in school, and it's a science book that teaches about sound and hearing and different senses. And it is a lot more interactive and inclusive than just a text to digital book. So those are some ways, and it's just the sound section of that book, that you can be a little more engaged by using a digital book. You learn about the sound, you hear the sound. So it has another way of getting a student to understand it. So how my students use digital books. So I had 2 groups of students this year, and they used digital books in a couple of different ways. So in one class, a student wrote about his experience as a refugee in a public hostel in 2019. So his experience of coming into the country as a refugee from Georgia, and his experiences living in a hostel, the things he liked, the challenges he faced, and he just put it all there in a book. Another student, Nieves, talked about guitar lessons and gave us a few songs and ideas of how to learn how to play the guitar. And then a third student created a book for her local branch, dyslexia branch, showing how parents can use accessibility features on the iPads that we were using in our classrooms to help their own kids with their own learning. Another way was Peak. So this was a very, very early Peak logo. Peak became a class publication for New Directions students, and they used Peak as a way to share information that they learned. So how Peak newsletter came about is that a student asked me, could she go write for a newspaper? And I was reminded of my own days in college where I wrote for a student publication. That publication 10 years ago was published once. It took most of our third year of college to get 8 pages that were published in a local newspaper. There were some mistakes that couldn't be fixed. And it was an experience that I didn't really want my student to face. So I decided, let's just do our own thing. And it was agreed in the class that it would be good for teamwork. They could show off their creativity. We could have an editor, we could have writers, we could have photographers. And it was just a class experience that they wanted to face. So when I look at the elements of learning, which I previously discussed in my presentation in Romania, the one that came in was mostly teamwork. And we worked as a team to share the goals of the project. So sharing creativity, planning for the future, building a community, these were some of the things that they wanted to talk about, as well as sharing struggles that they might have had in the past and looking forward to learning things for the future. The time frame was set with 1 issue per month coming out in February, March and April of this year. The last one, so the April one, will be published right after this meeting. So the students that are here with us are part of that, and they'll be publishing that in the next couple of weeks. So when we looked at content, we had people look at things like how much social media is too much, and looking at their own personal experiences because they're not always positive. We had a mental health guide for someone returning to education after having a 35 year gap from education. And we also had students reach out to the likes of Will Sliney, who's a graphic artist, authors and local creatives. So this helps their confidence in approaching people and their communication skills by trying to source those articles, which they sourced all by themselves. We also had look into the life of a YouTuber and the evolution of sound recording and other ideas that they had. As a team, they grew and they became very, very close through working on this project. This in turn helped them reach out, and they raised money for homeless people in their local communities. This is something that I think Peak just became a little bit more than just a newsletter for them. They wanted to make a difference. And the feedback from students were things like it brought challenges in dealing with other people. So this was someone who was never really someone that was comfortable with dealing with other people, and they suddenly found themselves like the editor, so the project leader, and it helped their own confidence and gave them an idea of what they wanted to do with their future. It also helped them collaborate with other classes. So this was one of the other classes. Some of the students from another class, they wanted to take part in the farewell issue because they'd seen the other class take part in the first 2, and they just wanted to have their own part and their own say, so they got to put their own names to it. So it opened it up to other students as well. Also sharing things like their creativity, how to make your own clothes, an interest in dancing and other content. So this is from the second class, and that was pretty much inspired by the enthusiasm that the first class felt. It rubbed off on them and they asked to be involved. Another bit of student feedback was from the guy that did the graphics. So he found it challenging to think of the graphics and the art for each of the issues and to do the front pages, but he said that the group helped him and they reassured him that there was no rush and everything would be okay and that it all worked out in the end. So it was something that he felt as well. It was an experience that he could practice his skills. These are 3 issues, so these are the February, March and April issue. They are now available on Apple Books. And how they were created was on Pages, so I'm going to show you one of those now. So this is a second issue. It's a combination of drawings of shapes, and for each one they have like a letter from the editor. They have a video, so this is like a quick video introduction of themselves and the college. They have what to find on each page, and they have text. So to edit any of these, they can just tap and type. They can also add collaborators, so they can all collaborate on it at the same time. They can add additional features like recording audio, camera, photo. They can put galleries that you can swipe through, or files or drawings. So it is multi-touch. It's not just a PDF that can be printed. It has a lot of interactivity in it. So if I go down, you'll see there's a few different things in here. Now for these, the design was mostly done by a few students, and then every student contributed it to it. So it was a big commitment. They did about 75 pages between the 3 issues, and it was a big lesson in teamwork and who works well as a team. Some people who thought they never could found out they were actually really good at it, and others just didn't like working in a team, and they discovered that. So it will be a good experience for their futures. If they were asked in an interview, did they like working in the team, they have this experience to go on. So their books are all available on the iBook store, and they're free to download. And when we look at why digital books, I hope I've shown you that it doesn't have to just be a PDF on a expensive digital device. It can be a lot more and a much better, enjoyable experience for students when they're learning from books.